Unbiased marijuana news is here. This is TNM News.
Hi everyone, Todd Daggett here from TNM News. Welcome once again to another Todd Talk. And in the studio with me today, I have a special guest, and he's originally from Austin, Texas. His name is Brian Yauger, and he is the visionary and the CEO behind a company called Lemonhaze, which are architects of exclusive experiences connecting the cannabis space together. Now, Brian is known as the most connected man in cannabis. We're going to learn how he established that reputation. And, really his career began in college football after he attended Texas State University and before transferring to Hardin-Simmons University, where he graduated with degrees in political science and history. He coached football for 12 years with Oklahoma State, Columbia University, and then after that was done, he went back to Austin. And then what was happening in the cannabis space is it was exploding all over the country. And certainly Brian recognized that and relocated to Seattle, Washington. And he was soon leading a business development company for a fund. And then in 2018, Lemonhaze pivoted from data to an events company when Brian discovered that events that the company organized to promote its services were the most successful aspect in its business. And he's really tailored these to industry executives. He has these golf tournaments that offer a day of really friendly competition, but on the golf course, is it ever friendly competition, right? And it's a great place for cannabis executives to really get together, take their ties off, not that many of them are wearing ties anyway, and walk around the links and network with one another. Brian is an avid golfer himself. He is a big sports fan, a cigar aficionado like myself as well, so we have that in common as well. And really, he took his love for the cannabis industry and his love for sports and created this Lemonhaze Cannabis Executive Golf Classic Tour and the Lemonhaze Cannabis Executive International. So, Brian, welcome to TNM News. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
So, Lemonhaze, first of all, where'd you get that name, and tell us what it's all about?
You know, the name is a funny story. So when my former business partner, investor, still a great friend, but he left the company a few years back to do some other things, was VP of marketing for Big Fish Games when they IPO'd for almost $1 billion. And because he was the marketing guy, he was the guy that was going to come up with the name. And he said, I've got the perfect name that will be cannabis enough, but will not give us problems with bank accounts, will not give us problems with SEO, will not give us problems with Google ads or Bing ads. And sure enough,
Facebook or Instagram or all right, everybody else.
And sure enough, he picked a name that gives us all sorts of problems with bank accounts, gives us all sorts of problems with SEO, gives us all sorts of problems with Google and Bing AdWords. So it's funny. We actually had looked into rebranding it a couple of times, tried to. A few years ago, we had done, this is back when we were still only doing Seattle events, only doing Washington State events. We did a big, the one time we dipped our toe into B2C events, we did a big comedy show with Hannibal Buress and a bunch of comedians from Saturday Night Live, and set up a way that cannabis companies could advertise to consumers in Washington State, which is not legal in Washington State. So we had to figure out a way to do that. And we tried to rebrand to Uncanny. We thought that was going to be the way to go. And then the trademark office said, nope, somebody's got it already. And by that time, we kind of had been established enough as Lemonhaze. We were starting to expand nationally at that time. And so it just stuck. And, I have to say, I do love it, but at times I have a love-hate relationship.
Yeah. And tell us what the theme is. I mean, I mentioned the golf tournaments and other events. So what really is a Lemonhaze event? Yeah.
So if you look at it on how we have to describe it for the government, and everything, we are a B2B cannabis events company, convention and events company. But technically, by what we are, it's a B2B convention and events company. And we've done a lot of, we've been doing this for a few years now. And we've tried a lot of different things. But at the end of the day, what we found works best for us and what our customers like more than anything, we have smaller, very boutique, very high-end, very strictly targeted events for certain segments of the industry. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. So basically we have, and this kind of, I wish I could tell you that we sat down and built this huge business plan. Now we just kind of figured out what people kept saying we liked, and we just kind of kept going towards it. But we identify 3 segments of the industry that we know that our customers want to talk to. And those 3 segments are bud tenders, dispensary buyers, and cannabis executives. So we do 3 different types of events, and we are currently in 14 states. And so what we are honestly, well, we're probably most well known now for the golf classics because they've really just exploded for the last year. But what we were most known for prior to was our bud tender events. Mm-hmm. And the concept is really simple. We'll go to any market. That market could be Seattle, Spokane, Portland, LA, Oakland, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, Boston, Detroit. We're all over the place. And we will go to all of the dispensaries in that market. We actually did one of these in Vegas, which actually right before COVID, which is actually what convinced me to move to Vegas. Mm-hmm. And we will invite all of the bud tenders in that market, where we've got, some coming up here in LA and San Diego. Those bud tenders will RSVP for just basically a big party. We verify their employment so we know who they are, what they, bud tender, buyer, manager, mm-hmm. whatever they may be, where they work. We basically throw them just a really big party, sometimes with bands, but it's always free form. It's always free food. It's always open bar. It's consumption allowed. And the different cannabis brands in that market will set up booths and will be able to advertise and educate the bud tenders on why the bud tenders should promote their product when consumers come in.
Right.
Because as you know, consumers right now, we are getting much more brand recognition today than we were a few years ago, but there's still a large percentage of consumers that come in, especially here in Vegas, that are tourists that walk in and have really no idea. They kind of walk in and say, "I want weed," and the bud tender kind of turns around and goes,
"That's right.
Which one?"
That's right.
and a large percent of that time they say, "I don't know."
Yeah, I think it's important to have bud tenders, educated on the aspects of pot, what makes it a good strain,
Absolutely.
And so on and so forth. And you're right, because people come here from all over the world and have never been able to walk into a store and buy weed before, right? And it's a whole new thing. Usually it's, hey, my buddy Frank has some. And, you get a bag under the table or something. But yeah, when, it's almost like going to like a makeup counter or a jewelry counter and they say, hey, I'm looking for this. And what do you got? So that's really great.
And even if they come from a state where they can, a lot of the brands are different. Yeah. I mean, you have your selective MSOs, you have Select and products like that that may be in multiple states, but for a lot of them, there's not. Yeah. And so that's what that's actually what we started with when we pivoted over to events, the whole backstory about how the bud tenders came up. But then when those started, then what we found was a lot of the brands also wanted to meet with the buyers for very similar reason, educate the buyer why they wanted to put it into their shop. So we started doing events for buyers. This is all we started in Seattle, officially became Lemonhaze in the current form in 2016. And in 2019, we said, it was time to start getting out of Washington State. Started doing some stuff in Portland, started getting down into California, did one very small event here in Las Vegas in February of 2020, which was the start of what was going to be our big national expansion. Right. And then this funny little thing called COVID-19, you might have heard about it. It's been on the news.
Wait, COVID-19? Yeah, no, it doesn't ring a bell.
It came and smacked us upside the head with a fiscal baseball bat. But, you never want to say something as horrific as that has caused so much damage is a good thing. But some side effects of it, one of which was at the time, Governor Inslee in Washington had said, you can, if you are economically challenged by COVID, you can get out of any of your lease penalty free. And I, obviously, when COVID happened, I had laid off our entire staff at the time, including myself. Seattle is not a cheap city to live in. I had already, what's that?
It's cold and wet.
It rains 9 months a year.
Right.
And we had just done that Vegas bartender event. And I, the amazing part about the Nevada market, the Nevada community, and I call it that. And we see this, we're all over the country, but there's something about the Nevada cannabis community that is that. It is a community. Yeah. It is small. It is, everybody knows everybody. Yeah. A lot of times they've worked with each other somewhere and didn't, right. But it's a community. It really is. And it's a family. And, like every family, there's a perverted uncle, a crazy aunt, and an alcoholic cousin, but it's a family. And it's great. And so it took one event for me to see it. It took one bud-turn event for me to see it. And so I got rid of my office in Seattle, and I was living downtown Seattle, which is very expensive. And I got rid of my apartment there and, looked to Vegas, moved here. We started doing some virtual events to keep the lights on. And that's when, back in, we're talking, November, December of 20, I guess at that point it was 2020, right. Governor Sisolak had said that you could do events of less than 250 people with social distance and all of that. And I was going, what the heck can we do? How can we bring the company out of COVID? And our bud-tender events always have 500 to 1,000 bud-tenders plus sponsors. So I knew that wasn't going to work, but I'm a golfer. And I said, you know what? A full golf tournament is 144 people. And with sponsors, you're still under 250. It's outdoor. It's socially distanced. And I said, okay, well, what the heck can we do that I can get sponsors that want to pay for it? Sure. And I said, and this was here in Vegas, and I just said, you know what, let's limit our golfers exclusively to C-suite, VP, and director of the licensed cannabis companies here in Nevada. Invite some cannabis companies from California and Washington that I knew that may want to come out and meet executives out here in Nevada for the purposes of licensing deals or whatever. And I tell you what, Todd, it was an amazing. It was the very first tournament we did. It was amazing. And all of our sponsors immediately came to me and said, please do Arizona. At the time, Arizona was the prettiest girl at the ball. Right. It was the newest rec market. It was the one everybody wanted to be in. So we scheduled Arizona very quickly, did one down there. And if we took off like a bottle rocket in Vegas, we took off like a rocket ship in Arizona. Nice. So we quickly, we basically took what was our roadmap for our bud-tender events. It was supposed to be a national expansion and used the golf tournaments to do it. And so we did, last year we did Florida, Oklahoma, Massachusetts, Michigan, Illinois, obviously Arizona, California, Nevada. This year we've added New Jersey, Ohio, Colorado, Missouri. I think I'm missing one in there. Northern California, I'm missing one in there, two in there. And then
you're all over the place.
Yeah, and got bud-tender events going in all those markets as well. Nice. As well as bud-tender events in also, still going in Washington State and Oregon, where we're not doing golf tournaments right now. So yeah, I know that was probably a longer explanation than we looked at, but that is the 30,000-foot overview of how we got sitting right here.
Right. Yeah, I was at the event in Vegas, and it was a real windy day.
It was.
Yeah, if you remember. But it was a lot of fun. And it was really, a great time for all. I mean, we did a lot of networking. We brought in some business, and it really was a great event. So, congrats on
appreciate that
on all of that success. And so, basically, what you did is you took your hobbies and you made them into a business, right?
I've always believed in this. You do what you like, but also you do what makes sense. Yeah. And I'll tell you where I came up with. Or the genesis of the idea, I should say. When I did get out of coaching and moved back to Austin, where I'm from, I started my first company, and we did commercial roofing, spray polyurethane foam, and epoxy roof coating. So we did a lot of trade shows, especially with like the self-storage unit, So I would go and I would spend whatever I'd spend, $3,000-$4,000 on a booth. Sit behind the booth for 3 days, talk to 300 people, of which 8 of them were the people I actually wanted to talk to. Right. And I ended up closing any deals that I had at the after party that night anyway. Right. And I said, why the hell don't we just put the trade show in the middle of the after party and make sure everybody at the after party is who you want to talk to? Right. And in a nutshell, that is all Lemonhaze is. It's an after party, or let me phrase that. It's a trade show disguised as an after party with the exact audience you want.
Right. That's nice. Yeah. And what has been the response by the participants and by the sponsors?
It's been, the participants have been absolutely amazing. We just went back to Southern California for the second time, and this will be our Nevada tournament for the second time. And they are just growing by leaps and bounds and the amount of executives we're getting, of owners and C-suite that are coming out and having a great time. And they love it because we outnumber our sponsors with our target audience, in this case, executives. Because there's nothing, you own a business, I own a business. There's nothing you hate more than going to some type of networking event, and every 3 steps, somebody's coming up jamming a card in your face trying to sell you something. Well, in our tournaments, a full golf tournament is 144 players. We only allow 40 salespeople, ancillary, 40 of our sponsors can golf. So there's 104 executives there and 40 salespeople. So so the salespeople can't get to everybody. That's their biggest complaint. Right. Make it longer so I can talk to more people. Right. And our executives aren't just being beat up all day long by salespeople. So it really works for both of them. And what really makes me probably most proud is and we're talking kind of the golf specific right now because that seems to be the biggest thing going, but is the amount of amazing deals that have come out of it. I'll give you an example. 2 examples, actually. So Agrify did the Vegas event last year where they met a guy named Mark Sed, who at that time was VP of retail sales for Curaleaf. He is now the SVP and co-founder of Gold Leaf Cannabis, which is started in Maryland, but now he's doing one of the co-founders of Gold Leaf in Florida. And they inked $140 million with Agrify for meeting that's worth $400 million over 10 years by meeting at Lemonhaze. At our invitational, we actually had Arco Murray, which is a major construction company, does all the top flights, does all the iFlies in the country. That's not announced yet, but they inked a multi-million-dollar construction deal with one of the major MSOs you would know that's not out yet, so probably keep that. But so starting to see those kind of deals coming out of our events, and we've been really, really fortunate. Some of our, more than some, a big chunk of our sponsors have moved their entire trade show budget from the big major trade show here in Vegas to us because they're like, you've got who we need.
They're right in business. That's right.
And so it's those kind of things. And then on the bud tender side, well, here's the beautiful part about it too, Todd, is all of those executives, those C-suite VP and directors that are essentially playing golf for free and having a great time are also our customers for the bud tender stuff. So they get to know us, see the kind of events we run. Right. And then then when we go to them and say we have a bud tender event, you've seen how our organization works. Right. They jump right on board.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And was it tough getting sponsors in the beginning? And it must be easier now that you have these great testimonials. Right? But what was it like in the beginning?
It was. I'm very fortunate, though. I do want to say this. I'm very fortunate that I've been in the industry for a while, like you, and because I got in the industry as it started in Washington State, I got I got to know everybody there, and that kind of expanded some of our, our Rolodex per se. We've done the big full convention. We did the whole twice. We ran out the entire Tacoma Dome. Did the whole traditional convention that we all know. Mm-hmm. I just don't have a lot of fun doing them. Yeah. And but so I already had a pretty decent Rolodex of those ancillary sponsors to reach out to. Now most of them laughed at me and said, or a lot of them jumped on and did maybe one, and now they're doing all of them. Right. But there was an article came out about that's where the most connected man in cannabis came from.
Good, that's my next question.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is when you are selling something, generally the decision maker likes to push you off on an admin or get you down to somebody that. But when you're giving them a golf tournament for free, you're in their phone.
That's right.
So, so for a lot of guys, and just the way I have the most amazing team in the world, they are. I'm very open about it. I am not attention to detail. I'm generally like to think I'm a nice guy that likes to smile and have a beer with you, so my team runs the events soup to nuts, and I just get to play host. And when you get to play host, that means you get to have a pop or two with them. You get to maybe, hit a joint with them. And so you just get to know people. Right. And when you do as much as we've done around the country, you just kind of get to know people. And the Invitational, which is a little bit different. I don't know if you remember it last year, but we do our regional events like we just described in all those different areas. And last year we said, you know what, we were having so much fun that we said, let's go for it. And there are 3 what we would call destination golf courses here in Vegas. Shadow Creek, which is $1,000 a round to play. The Wynn, which is $750 something bucks to play, and Cascada, which is about $500 to play. Shadow Creek is associated with MGM, and the Wynn obviously is with the Wynn. So they have a lot of restrictions about who can stay where, whatever. Sure. Cascada, which is just the most gorgeous course in the world, doesn't. So we did what we called our national tournament, our invitational, where it was invite only. You had to be invited to be a golfer, and you had to be invited to be a sponsor. Your requirements to be invited as a golfer was you had to be a C-suite or VP of one of the major national MSOs, or one of the major national companies worth over $100 million, like a Steezy, or what we consider an up-and-comer. Some of the VCs came out. Jetty is one that comes to mind, where they said, hey, they may not be worth $100 million yet, but they're multiplying their revenue every couple of quarters, and now they are actually probably Steezy's biggest competition in California. And we had up-and-coming companies, diversity companies and women-owned companies as well that got into that. And that was so... And it really caught fire. I mean, we had the CEOs, we're the C-suite and founders of, gosh, let me think of all of them last year, of Cureleaf, Verona, Jushi, Cresco Labs. We had Tilt. I'm going to get Air. Somebody's going to get mad at me because I left them off here. But it really became a very coveted invitation. And it was funny. We actually had to, we were turning down so many people that were like, I want to play in this. And we were like, we can't really fit everybody in. So we actually had to form a committee this year to determine who gets invitations and who doesn't. That's funny. Yeah. So that we're actually be announcing that one this year, coming up later this summer. So, but yeah, it really was we did it in October last year, and it was really just amazing. We had just we went all out for it. We had limousines picking up all the executives from their hotels and taking them out to Cascada. Awesome. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I bet. Well, we got to get, hosts and media folks like the guys over at TNMNews over on that list.
Yeah.
Throwing it out there, just throwing it out there.
We love having media.
Yeah. So I'd love to come out to the next event and talk to some folks and get some feedback, and we can even do a live broadcast from there too. But we'll talk about that moving on. So you talked about it a little bit. Is there consumption at your events, or is it all just state based?
It's state based, and it's state based, and also what the type of event is. So as you know, you cannot have consumption at any liquor license facility in the country. Right. So our golf tournaments are not. They are. As you can imagine, all golf courses are liquor license facilities. Yep. So those are strictly networking business events. Mm-hmm. Our bud tender events and our buyer events, again, depending on the state and what we can do and where we can do it. We do those at non-liquor license facilities. Mm-hmm. Again, depending on the state regulations, some say, if you charge or don't charge. California's a perfect example where brands can actually have samples delivered to themselves at a venue where consumption can be allowed. So some are, no, some are not. Right. It depends on the type of event, depends on the market.
Right. And everyone's sneaking a little vape pen,
Well, I would never say that nobody's ever pulled out a vape pen on the seventh hole, but
right.
Right.
Right. So you say you're doing events all over the country, right? And you're 14 different states. Who do you think has the most receptive and the best cannabis community?
Massachusetts, hand down.
Really?
Yeah.
And why is that?
I think it's it's a couple. So this does change. It does vary. It's not always. Massachusetts right now, as of right now, is a really good mixture of both MSO and privately owned companies. It's a market that has been able to keep their price point enough to where it's not like a Washington State where everybody's just getting beat to death.
Right.
But it's also not too expensive at the same time. And because I don't know if it's just because, legalized cannabis really started out here on the West Coast and kind of built on it. And so a lot of companies like ours and other ones are kind of West Coast or Colorado focused, and there's not a lot that's been focused out there. When we go out there, it's very similar to Nevada. You really have a community out there. You have a community that wants to come to Lemonhaze. They want to be together. They want to, because sponsors agree. Look, we're all here to make money. Sure. I need sponsors. I need sponsors to pay my bills, to feed my staff, to do everything else. But at the end of the day, my sales team is, they need to make sure our sponsors are always happy. Mm-hmm. I want to make sure our executives and our bud tenders are always happy. That's where it's an internal fight. Sure. I'm like, their sales teams say, we got to do this, go down. I'm like, no, that's just gonna piss off our executives, and we need them to come back next year. So a lot of our events, we have a lot of out-of-state golfers, executives that come to all of our events for the purposes of making licensing deals, and we see that happening, mm-hmm. and it's fun, and that's. But yeah, so right now, I don't want to say Massachusetts is my favorite. I don't have favorites. Well, Nevada is my favorite, of course. Yeah. But it really is right now probably the most fun market we go to.
Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, they seem to be the big hub on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Massachusetts, because Florida's kind of a mess. The medical market, and Arkansas, isn't really much of a market.
Yeah, what's funny about we did Florida a few weeks ago, and Florida. It obviously it's a huge market. Yeah. It's second only to California, but they just don't know each other.
Yeah,
they don't, and it's there's no wholesale sales, so that's a big part of it. Yeah. Everything is vertical, and it really is. We had a lot of fun down there.
There's only a handful of them.
Yeah, there's 17 licenses, and they don't really interact with each other that much. They don't really have any desire to interact with each other that much. So it was a lot of fun to actually see them do it at our event.
Yeah, I think when Florida turns recreational, I think a lot of that will change.
I totally agree.
Because more licenses will be given out, and more things will open, more people will be involved. It's difficult sometimes in just a medical only state. So what do you have coming up? And, where are you going to for the rest of, 2022?
Oh, wow. So, so for 2022, we are really, we're actually calling it our bridge year. It is our year where we want to go ahead and either reestablish or establish ourselves in all of the major rec markets and the medical markets that are going rec. So, we are doing our golf events in SoCal, NorCal, Arizona, which we've done those already, Florida, Nevada, Michigan, Illinois, Ohio, Missouri, New Jersey, and Massachusetts. We will be doing bud tender events in all of those markets, except for, ironically, Nevada. Although we're working on that. There's some laws that came about here in Nevada that makes our bud tender events a little more difficult right now, but we're working something out. But we'll be adding the bud tender events also in Washington, Oregon, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, and that'll be kind of our bridge year of this year. And in 2023, we'll be adding on not only to those markets we're already in. We'll be adding several more markets in the States, as well as Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, and Puerto Rico.
Oh, nice.
So, we've got a full expansion plan, which is a lot of work. It's raising some money, but it is, heck, we throw golf tournaments and parties for a living.
No, pretty good gig if you can get it. So how's your golf game? now that you're playing?
Not near as good as it should be.
Right.
You know what? It drives me crazy. As I like to think, as I like to think, a decent athlete. You know, I got to go to college for it. I mean, I'm stuck in a 13 handicap. I can't get off it. You
got to play more and mingle less.
Yeah, I know. That's the crazy part about it.
Right.
You know what's funny though, Todd? Sorry, I'm gonna get off a little tangent here real quick. Ricky Williams plays in a lot of our tournaments. You know, he's got the new Heisman brand out there.
Yeah,
Ricky's
been on TNMNews.
Has he?
Yeah.
So I coached against Ricky when I was at Oklahoma State and he was at Texas.
Yeah.
And I still give him a hard time about it because we broke his 100-game winning streak, although they beat us in the last play of the game. Right. Jerk. But we've gotten in a lot of really good discussions because, you know, that was the first question he asked me when he started playing our tournaments. He was like, you were a coach. How did you, because he didn't smoke when he went to Texas. Yeah. People don't realize that. It was when he came out of Texas.
That's right.
Or while he was in Texas and came out. He said, how did you know, what were you guys saying? He goes, well, I know what we were saying as players. What were you guys saying in the staff room? And I was like, Ricky, you know, it was never, don't tell him not to smoke cannabis because it's bad for him. It was tell him not to smoke cannabis because it's going to get him suspended.
Right.
And
it's illegal.
Yeah, and you know we've talked about it because he and I both. I'm the guy that Nancy Reagan's "Don't say no" or "Just say no to drugs" worked on.
Right.
I was in the industry. I was over 40 years old in the industry before I smoked a joint for my very first time.
Right.
And because I was the guy that was always so afraid of being drug tested when I was playing, and when I was coaching, that I didn't want to. And when you learn about it, and you learn that it is safer than alcohol and all the things that we talk about in the industry so much, but it's really been interesting. Not only meeting meeting again Ricky and talking about the athletic side of it, but also the people on the business side, because there's so many people like me and like you that came out of different industries and conservative industries like coaching, where you're not allowed to do this kind of stuff. And so it's really been so much fun going around the country, meeting so many people, some of which come out of medical markets and are born and bred stoners, and a lot are like Brian. I'm just like you. They're like, I smoke to go to sleep because I can't. You know, I only started a few years ago. I got in it for the business, and so it's it's just been a really, really good time.
Yeah, we'll talk about that for a minute. So you're in your 40s, right? And you smoke pot for the first time. What was that like? Did it freak you out? Did it make you feel good? I mean, what was that first experience like as a 40-year-old?
Well, the first thing I did was sit in the corner and giggled for about an hour.
Lucky.
Yeah, and that it's funny you said that. So that was for the first, I don't know how many times, it was literally sit in the corner and giggle. That was kind of, and then of course I'm going to be, you know, the monkey with the brass cojones, and somebody says, try dab. Whew. Yeah, that wasn't the smartest thing I ever did.
Yeah.
And so
I call dabs pot crack.
Yeah, so that was just find a way to get to an Uber and try to tell him where my apartment was in Seattle, and find a way to get up to my unit, but you know where it's been for me at this time is I'm still not somebody that can consume during the day and work effectively. Right. I can't do it. I am a huge fan of edibles or vape pens before bed. That's
me too.
And as you know, as a business owner, and as a business owner trying to scale a company, and the excitement and the fear that goes with that, and the problems, we've all had those times of waking up at 1 a.m. and staring out the window or at the ceiling for 8 hours till your alarm clock goes, or 7 hours till your alarm clock goes off. And already? Right. Yeah. So it's helped me a lot with just that kind of stress, especially in the evening when you need to turn your brain off. And of course, you can make the mistake and hit the wrong strain and turn your brain on. Turn your brain way too much on, way too long.
That's right.
But yeah, so it's been, and Todd, the thing is, you know what's funny about it is when I was playing and when I was coaching, I was always very adamant, don't smoke pot. Yeah. Again, not because I thought it was bad for you. I just didn't want my players suspended. Sure. I mean, I was the biggest cheerleader against it.
Right.
And so when I got in the industry, and word just, being in the industry now for, 6 or 7 years, and word kind of gets out, they see you on LinkedIn or whatever. To this day, the amount of emails, text messages of like, Yauger, yeah, wait a minute, you're the last guy that's supposed to
players still get in touch with you.
Oh, absolutely, all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the time. And and they give me all sorts of hell.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, they give me all sorts of hell, especially the guys from Colombia.
Yeah.
That are all now working for hedge funds somewhere.
Yeah.
And they give me a hard time, then they ask me who to invest in.
Yeah.
So
And did you feel, after you smoked a few times, in your 40s, like, why did I wait so long?
I did, but can I tell you, I probably still have some fear that even though I know, one, I'm a full-grown adult and there's nobody to get me in trouble,
Right.
And it's legal. There are still times because you just go 40 plus years that I'm like, oh, is somebody going to catch me?
Right.
It doesn't matter.
You don't have to do this anymore.
Yeah. I did. I coached all the way up till I was 36 years old, and I was always fearful of, I'm gonna get offered my dream job at Texas A&M, and I'm gonna not get it because they're gonna drug test. So, so I never really was regretted that part of it. But yeah, once I got in it and understood it. Excuse me. That's that Hardin-Simmons education for you right there. Once I got in it and understood it, then yeah, it really has. But again.
Yeah, I was similar. I smoked before I was 40, but all through high school, I was an athlete in high school, and I never smoked because I was afraid of what drugs would do. I never, ever. And I had friends that were total stoners, and I'd be like, hey, man, just not for me. And, I drank plenty in high school, and that was illegal. But, when I was a kid, it was, you had to be 18 to drink, right? So when I was 16 and 17, I was always a big kid. So it was easy, it was just easy for me to get the booze. But I was the same way. I watched some movie that, in school that was about not doing drugs. And it really scared me. And my parents were very anti-weed and anti-drugs and so I was like that. And then when I was 18, I traveled around the country, and I went to visit my cousin who lived up in Ukiah, California. And he's known as the king of pot, and he was a big marijuana smuggler, brought in $1 billion worth of pot into San Francisco from Colombia. And I was at his, 300-acre facility with, a 20-foot wall around the whole thing. And I was like, what is this all about? And that was the first time I smoked pot. And same as you, I giggled for like 3 hours. It was like the funniest thing ever. And we were like, yeah, can we get some of this pot from you? You know what I mean? And it really, just changed my whole outlook on things. And I thought to myself, this is like the best time I've ever had. What was the big deal? But it's funny, I always talk about my sister, who's a 35-year school teacher. She's actually retiring this year, and she's been teaching 5th grade, and she's never smoked pot ever because it's illegal, it's frowned upon. She doesn't want to get piss tested, like everybody. And, she has some medical issues, as we all get when we're older, right? And she has, some stomach issues, and because I'm the black sheep pot smoker of the family, right? And but now she's got her medical card. She lives in Florida. She got her medical card, and she's a regular consumer because it helps her, because it makes her feel better, because it takes the pain away, and because it helps her sleep. And it's funny how my brother, who was a judge in Florida, who is way anti-pot, she won't even tell him that she consumes, right? So it's so funny. We were on a conference call together, and I made a joke about it, and she was like, and I'm like, what is your deal? You're in your 60s, yeah, right? And you're hiding the fact that you like to smoke a vape pen once a week. You know what I mean? It was a little ridiculous.
Well, let me ask you this question along those lines. So this is something, because I get asked as much as anything. Like you said, you said, what did you wish it was? So when I first started consuming, and of course I liked it, and I loved it going to bed, and I love it, before sleep. But if somebody said, what do you not like? And I actually have had some discussions with some of the liquid edible people around the country about this. So if you ask what I don't like, it's like, well, like you, I mean, I've been drinking since since long before I should have been.
Should have been, right.
So I'm like, the one part about it that bugged me or I didn't find as enjoyable, because I don't like hangovers. Nobody likes hangovers,
Right.
but I do like being able to go to the sports bars with my buddies. And we may watch 2 games for 5 hours, might knock down 12 beers. Yeah, I'm going to be hammered when I'm done,
Sure.
but I'm not going to be hammered after the first one.
Right.
It's a build-up effect. So as a social drug, I was still finding alcohol as a better social drug for being able to do what I wanted for the social interaction
Right.
at the time. And whereas if I smoked a joint, I was high,
Yeah.
and then I was going to sit in the corner and giggle, or if you two were talking, I would sit and just kind of in the corner and stare and listen to the.
Yeah.
And so now I'm seeing a lot of the liquid edible companies coming out with, with the, I guess you call it microdosing, with the smaller, so you can, and being able to bring the price points down on that. But what are you seeing, obviously, with the lab and everything, with, I don't want to say pot's not a social drug, it's absolutely a social drug.
It is 100% a social drug.
But on I guess with the microdoses, not just with the liquid edibles, but with everything, just so you can have a little bit more of a build up to it.
Yeah.
For affordable rate. Do you see anything that's worked with that?
I think you hit it on the head with microdosing, and a lot of people are using this nanotechnology, and putting it in these liquid edibles in order to do that, right? So you can kind of build up. But the thing with cannabinoids is that we have this endocannabinoid system in our bodies, right? And once they fill up with cannabinoids, they shut, right? So once you're there until you're not anymore, right? So there's not really a build-up, system in pot, because you smoke until you're high, and then you either smoke more and you don't get higher, right? If you keep smoking, you just waste pot, right? Is really what happens. So, people who like to smoke a joint, 3 or 4 hits in is enough to fill up your endocannabinoid receptors, right? You just have to wait a little bit. But people usually waste the rest, but this is a habit kind of a thing, and people like doing that whole thing, right? But there isn't really a time-released, sort of a cannabis drug out there yet. I guess there will be eventually.
I was going to say, does the science allow for that? Is that something that can?
That's the thing with our endocannabinoid system, is that, we have these CB1 and CB2 receptors that, are all throughout our body and brain. And once they fill up, they close.
Yeah.
And they're filled up. And that's why there's no overdoses on weed. And that's why you can't smoke too much. Now, you can smoke a dab and get, blitzed out of your mind. And you can eat too many edibles and get blitzed out of your mind. I have a couple bad edible stories where I just got uncomfortably wasted and didn't want to be, right? And then you just got to wait it out. It's just like a 4-hour, oh God, I just got to ride it out. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think over time, something will be developed. I think when pharma takes over, they will try to certainly synthesize the cannabinoid, and which they've been unsuccessful with thus far. And I think a time release is in order, but I think it's going to be very difficult.
It's going to be nice, and I think for what for the reasons you were mentioning earlier, starting at in my 40s, because it sounds like you and I were a lot alike. We like to throw a few back in our younger days.
For sure.
Unfortunately, I like to throw a few back in my older days too. But the old adage, you could party till 4 a.m. and be up for practices at 7 a.m. when you're in your 20s. In your 30s, you got a little worse.
That's right.
In your 40s, and now, I mean, I have no desire to get hammered because the hangover is going to last 2 days.
That's right.
Whereas
one of the advantages of pot.
Whereas you don't deal with that at all with cannabis, which is so much nicer.
Yeah.
But I still am looking for that potential of slow release when I'm down at the pool in these warm summer days we have.
Just use get a low THC vape pen, get a 50-50 CBD to THC, and just smoke a little less THC, and you will kind of get high slower, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So where do we find you, Brian? Where do we find you? I'm sure you have some a website. I'm sure you have some social media. tell us where to stay in touch.
Absolutely. So lemonhaze.com is the website. That's where you'll find information on all of our locations, everywhere we're going. We're on Instagram at Lemonhaze at Lemonhaze Party. I always forget to add the at before that. At Lemonhaze Party. Also LinkedIn, because we're heavily on LinkedIn because the executive side of things.
Sure.
At Lemonhaze. But yeah, lemonhaze.com and look us up, and when we're coming to your region, come out and join us. I got to tell you, we have a lot of fun.
Yeah, it sounds like it. And I had a lot of fun at the event here in Vegas, and so congrats on that. And I'm looking forward to the next event. Brian Yauger, he is from Lemonhaze. Make sure you check him out at lemonhaze.com. You'll check out all his social media. He's got golf tournaments all over the country, bud tender events all over the country. If you're in Massachusetts, make sure you check that out because he says it's a pretty great crowd. I'm going to stand strong that the Nevada community is a pretty strong partying crowd.
I'll agree with that.
Right.
We'll agree with that.
So we'll look for you here in Vegas and, again, all over the country. It's lemonhaze.com. Brian, thanks for coming out. Anything you want to add?
No, I appreciate it very much, but it just made me think of one thing when you said about
Sure.
Vegas, letting on a party here. So when we did, we do these bud tender events, so they're pretty much wash, rinse, repeat type of events.
Sure.
And we did the very first one in Vegas, and I got several calls, which I had never received at any other market, of how do I buy a VIP spot?
Right.
Nobody had ever asked me that
Yeah.
in Seattle or Portland or Spokane.
Vegas, it's all about the VIP treatment,
That,
right?
I remember laughing when I got that, and I said, you know what? If we're going to be going to other regions of the country, we need to be ready for what those
Yeah.
regions are used to.
That's right.
And but I got to tell you, it's been, again, you never want to say something as horrific as COVID is the best thing that can happen. But
it worked out.
because of COVID, I moved to Vegas, and as you can imagine, coaching and everything, I've lived a lot of places. I've lived in 11 states and 2 countries. I think I finally found the spot I'm going to stop.
Nice.
And I've absolutely loved being in Vegas. The Nevada market has been so good to us, so warming. Because not every market is. Not every market is. Some markets just don't like the guy coming in
Right.
from another state.
That's right.
But the Nevada market, I met Shelby when I first moved here, and the introduction. So I for what it's worth, for people that are here in Nevada that listen to this, thank you guys. It really, you made us feel, myself, my staff, feel warm and welcome and loved, and I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you and appreciate bringing everybody together to have a good time. Brian Yauger, he went from coaching to cannabis conventions. Pretty good. That means that anybody can really get into the cannabis space, and why not? It is the top job growth industry in the world right now. So make sure you check out your area, wherever you are and you're watching us from. Make sure you check out Brian at lemonhaze.com and look for a golf tournament coming to you. Brian, thanks a lot for coming. And I'm Todd Dankin with TNM News. Good night and have a pleasant tomorrow.
This is TNM News.